A big thank you, for using the premises. It's great. It's a nice wee venue. It's very homely. And as being a Sunday night, it's almost like being at church. So there's no preaching going on except there's some spirit. So I hope you at least appreciate the spirit. So as you see, there he's there, the stand-in for Sean Connery. When Sean can't make it, I'm the one that steps in. I'm known as his sex double, so there you go. Been most of my life in the whiskey business, which actually is only a couple of years, really. I started in Jura in 1974 as a mashman stillman, assistant manager and manager of Jura and Bruichladdich, and then moved to the north, and I was manager of Fettercairn, Tamnavullen and Tullibardine distilleries. So really, it's whiskey that's really in the blood. And then somebody asked me if I would like to go and preach the gospel of single malts, and why not? It's much better than working. I always say to these people, they've had a hard day doing this, and I thought, no, this is very easy. I've done some hard work. This is the easy part. So what we're going to do today, this evening, is to start when we eventually start tasting, and I will get around to you letting you taste the whiskey. Has anybody been to Jura before? And don't say you've been to Islay and not been to Jura. Has anybody been to Islay? No. And been to Jura as well?
No, we didn't have the time.
See, what did I say? Imagine going to Mecca and missing it. It's just ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. So when I do this presentation, what's in front of you there, obviously she's a very beautiful woman, as you can see, and she smells just absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure she will taste for yourselves extremely well. But for me, it's much more than that. It's more about the island itself, in which I brought up my family there and lived there for so long, and into that kind of environment. So when I look into this glass, I also see this beautiful woman. I also smell this and taste this beautiful woman. But I also see the people of the island and the island itself, and the people who helped me make this wonderful whiskey. And some of them, unfortunately, are not with us today. So it was really a big team effort, but not just for the people who work at the distillery, but for the people who live on this island of the island of Jura. And to me, that's the most important thing. And if anything you get from tonight, the next time you look at a whiskey, whether it's Jura or wherever it is, you kind of look at it in a different light and think about where it's coming from and who's made it and what it's going to give to you. I don't like people to say, well, that's not a nice whiskey, it's horrible. To me, there's no bad whiskies, it's all a matter of taste. So for me, it's getting all that across, but starting off with looking at where it's coming from, and then you have a better appreciation of what you're going to taste. So that gives you some idea of the location of it, and something that I've been trying to tell you is about how this people they live on this island. So there's the distillery, at the same site as that original distillery from 1810, built by the Campbells of Jura, the landlords of the islands, and inviting distillers to come in and make a spirit for them. And that happened right up to 1919, where the distillery was completely closed. A couple of world wars happened, and then the distillery getting rebuilt in the early 60s, and getting rebuilt with a vision again of the landowners of Jura, trying to bring prosperity back, trying to bring this distillery back to life again, trying to bring people to the island, families, children, and so to try and grow this population again. And that's how it really started again. And of course, looking for money for that, they went to Scottish and Newcastle brewers. So I worked for Scottish and Newcastle breweries. They were the original founders of it. They were the strong arm of it. And since then, we've been through a few companies, and I'll not bore you or take up any more of your time by telling you them, but that's how it started. on the same site and using obviously the same resources. So people always say to me, Willie, you know, what makes Scotch whisky the way it is, and its individuality. And it's always, it's quite an easy question for me to answer, but it's not, I can't put it into percentages. Some people like to say, oh, it's this, and you know, it's that, and this is the percentage of it. To me, it's a whole gambit of everything, and I wouldn't dream of starting to put any percentages on it. But for me, as a distiller, the main ingredient really is the water. And not just the water, but the geology of the water, where it's flowing through, what it's flowing through, the minerals it's picking up as it comes down into the distillery for us to use it. And that's the source. It comes from a loch high up in the mountains. Original loch used for the cattle drovers who were coming from Isle of Jura to the mainland to sell their cattle. It's called the Market Loch, simply because that was the stopping ground for them. But it's a very soft water. You get a lather, you know, if you sometimes you go places, you go into the shower and you can't get a lather, the water's so hard. And Jura is very soft, but it's also running through quartz, but it's also running through peat bogs as well. So it's quite discoloured, it's kind of brownish most of the time, particularly if there's a spate of heavy rain. So, but the most important part of it, it's a very soft and gentle water. Where I am now in Fetter Cairn, for instance, it's quite a hardish water coming from the Grampian Mountains, a lot purer because it's coming from the bowels of the Grampian Mountains, but from there it's a much softer water. So that's the part of the start of the process. Without it, there wouldn't be a distillery. You wouldn't build a distillery in a remote island off the west coast of Scotland. It doesn't make any economical sense whatsoever, bringing all the raw materials on and all the raw materials back off again. They're basically there for the water. And of course, malted barley, different varieties used at different times. Varieties keep changing now over the years, and much better, bigger yields for us as distillers trying to make spirit. And for me, that's what that product does. It basically gives me a spirit and lots of it. No maltings, obviously, on Jura. Buying it either from Port Ellen on Islay or from the mainland of Scotland, which would be up the east coast of Scotland. From Perthshire up to the Black Isle really is the larder of Scotland, with most vegetables and most plants are grown, including barley for malting, for us and for the brewing business. And if anybody has any questions about anything, by all means just stop me and ask. It's a two-way system here. So there's for me, the distillation is so important. So this man who designed these stills in 1962, when he put that pen to paper, was a man called Delmy Evans, a Welshman, in fact. And he also had a distillery at Tullybarden. He owned Tullybarden and built Tullybarden in 1947. And if you go into Tullybarden distillery, the stills in Tullybarden are miniature Juras. So what he did, he created what I like to call them is a family. So in a family you have two parents, you have a mother and a father. So we have two mothers and we have two fathers, so two sets of stills. And if you look at the size and the shape of them, the vision of him was to make a very light Highland malt.